The text message that changed everything arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, lighting up my phone like a digital bomb in our pristine Miami bedroom. Your husband will lose everything soon. Due. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm James Carter, and up until that moment, I thought I had it all figured out. At 35, I'd built a digital marketing empire from scratch, transforming my blue-collar roots into a luxury lifestyle complete with a waterfront home, a yacht named Serotonin, and what I believed was a loving marriage to Alice. Turns out, I was about as sharp as a bowling ball when it came to reading the woman sleeping next to me. Alice stirred beside me, her blonde hair catching the moonlight streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows. She looked peaceful, innocent even. The kind of innocent that makes you want to check your wallet twice. Nothing says, "I love you," like helping your wife fix a printer at 11 p.m., I'd joked to my business partner Greg just last week. But lately, Alice's late nights had nothing to do with malfunctioning technology and everything to do with what I was beginning to suspect was malfunctioning loyalty. The signs had been there for months, subtle as a freight train in a library. Alice's newfound interest in girls' nights that stretched past midnight. Her phone perpetually face down on surfaces, protected like state secrets. The way she'd started dressing for grocery runs like she was heading to Fashion Week. "Meetings," she'd say when I asked about her schedule. "You know how demanding the charity board can be." Right. Because organizing yacht club fundraisers required the same level of security clearance as launching nuclear missiles. I slipped out of bed, padding barefoot to my home office. The message was still there, glowing accusingly. Diego Salazar, Miami's self-proclaimed digital king and my biggest business rival. The man drove a customized Mustang like he was compensating for something, which, given the evidence currently burning a hole in my retina, he apparently was. Diego had been circling my business like a shark for years, trying to poach clients with his flashy presentations and Latin charm. What I hadn't realized was that he'd been circling my wife too. I pulled up Alice's cloud account. Yes, I knew her passwords. We were married, not strangers, and started digging. Screenshots of conversations that read like a masterclass in betrayal. Plans to transfer my confidential client data, strategies to sabotage my upcoming product launch, and threaded through it all, enough sexual innuendo to make a romance novelist blush. "The only thing hotter than this plan is your Mustang's engine," Alice had written. My sarcastic brain couldn't help but note, that explains the burnt clutch smell every time he pulls up to the yacht club. But this wasn't funny. This was war. I grabbed my phone and called Tyler, my 28-year-old IT genius who could hack his way into Fort Knox if you gave him enough energy drinks and proper motivation. "Tyler, it's James. I need you to do something for me, and I need it done quietly." "Boss, it's almost 3 a.m. Did someone die?" "Not yet," I said, staring at the evidence of my wife's treachery. "But someone's about to wish they had." Tyler arrived at my office the next morning, looking like he'd wrestled with a computer all night and lost. His usually perfect man bun was disheveled, and he clutched a coffee mug like it contained the secrets of the universe. "You're not gonna like this," he said, dropping a tablet on my desk. I was right. I didn't like it. I hated it with the intensity of 1,000 burning suns. The hacked data told a story that would make Shakespeare weep. Alice and Diego hadn't just been planning to destroy my business. They'd been choreographing it like a ballet of betrayal, complete with dirty talk that made me want to bleach my brain. "He'll lose everything Friday night. I want to see you smile when it happens," Alice had written, followed by enough explicit details about her plans for Diego that I briefly considered changing careers to something less soul-crushing, like tax auditing. "There's more," Tyler said, his fingers dancing across the tablet. "They've scheduled a fake security breach alert to go out to all your top clients Friday evening, right during your product launch party." Alice has access to your systems through the home network. I leaned back in my chair, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. My wife hadn't just cheated. She'd set fire to my entire life and handed Diego the matches. She didn't just break my heart, I muttered. She tried to break my everything. Tyler nodded sympathetically. What do you want to do about it? What did I want to do? I wanted to rain down vengeance like a biblical plague. I wanted to make them both rue the day they decided to mess with James Carter, but I also wanted to do it smart, legal, and with enough style to make it memorable. Get me Detective Rosa Alvarez on the phone, I said, and clear my schedule. We're going to war. Detective Rosa Alvarez was a 42-year-old no-nonsense cop who'd helped me out of a sticky situation with a stalker client last year. She had the kind of street smarts that came from growing up in Miami's rougher neighborhoods and the kind of integrity that made her one of the few cops I trusted completely. James, she said when she arrived at my office an hour later, you look like someone stole your yacht and sold it for scrap. Worse, I said, sliding the tablet across my desk. Someone stole my wife and is trying to sell my business for scrap. Rosa's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline as she scrolled through the evidence. Holy mother of pearl, your wife and Diego Salazar? This is like a telenovela, but with more corporate espionage. Can we nail them legally? Business sabotage, conspiracy, maybe theft of intellectual property, Rosa mused. It's not murder, but it'll definitely ruin their day. And their reputation, and possibly their freedom. Good, I said, because I'm planning to ruin a lot more than that. That evening, I confronted Alice in our kitchen, armed with my phone recording everything and a heart full of righteous fury. So, I said, leaning against the granite countertop with studied casualness. What's Diego got that I don't have, besides my client list and your loyalty? Alice's face went through more color changes than a mood ring in a tornado. James, I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I'm pretty sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. Unless there's another D in your life who sends devil emojis and makes plans to destroy my business while discussing the horsepower of his Mustang in ways that would make a mechanic blush. The tears came first. Big, dramatic sobs that might have moved me if I hadn't seen the evidence of her treachery in high definition. Then came the denials, the pleading, the promises that it wasn't what it looked like. It's exactly what it looks like, I said calmly. The only question now is whether you want to salvage any dignity from this mess, or if you'd prefer to go down with Diego's ship. When the tears didn't work, Alice's true colors emerged like a flag of war. You never appreciated me, she screamed. You're always working, always focused on your precious business. Diego makes me feel alive. Diego makes you feel alive? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Honey, when I'm done with both of you, you'll feel lucky to feel anything at all. Friday couldn't come fast enough. The Fontainebleau Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewelry store explosion, filled with Miami's tech elite and my biggest clients. My product launch party was supposed to be the crown jewel of my career, the night I unveiled the marketing platform that would revolutionize digital advertising. Instead, it was going to be the night I revolutionized revenge. I'd spent the week preparing with the precision of a military strategist. Tyler had rerouted all our communications through a backup system, turning Alice's planned security breach into digital theater. Detective Rosa had positioned herself strategically near the bar, nursing a martini and looking like just another guest instead of the law enforcement officer ready to pounce. Alice looked stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. She moved through the crowd like she owned the place, playing the perfect supportive wife while secretly planning to burn it all down. The performance was Oscar-worthy, if Oscars were given for treachery. Diego arrived fashionably late, naturally, his presence announced by the rumble of his ridiculous Mustang outside. He strutted into the ballroom wearing a suit that screamed, "I'm compensating for something," and a smile that suggested he thought he'd already won. "James," he called out, approaching with arms spread wide like we were long-lost brothers instead of bitter rivals. "Congratulations on tonight. I hope everything goes smoothly." The emphasis on smoothly told me he was expecting fireworks. He was going to get them, just not the kind he was anticipating. "Diego," I replied, accepting his handshake and using the opportunity to slip a tracking AirTag into his jacket pocket. "Thanks for coming. I know how much you enjoy watching other people succeed." His smile faltered slightly. "Of course. Competition makes us all better, doesn't it?" "It certainly does," I agreed. "Sometimes it reveals exactly who people really are." 20 minutes later, I watched from the mezzanine as Alice and Diego met in the parking garage, thinking they were hidden from view. What they didn't know was that Tyler had hacked the hotel's security system, giving us front-row seats to their private conversation. "Is everything ready?" Diego asked, pulling Alice close in a way that made my hands clench into fists. "The breach alert goes out in 10 minutes, Alice replied, her voice carrying clearly through Tyler's audio feed. "James will be humiliated in front of everyone. His clients will run screaming. And then they'll come running to me," Diego finished, kissing her neck. "You're brilliant, mi amor. When this is over, we'll have everything we want." "Everything James thought was his," Alice agreed. That was all I needed to hear. I nodded to Tyler, who sent a signal to Detective Rosa. Within minutes, she was approaching Diego and Alice in the parking garage, badge out and expression serious. "Excuse me," Rosa said in her official cop voice. "I'm Detective Alvarez, Miami PD. I'd like to speak with both of you about some irregularities we've discovered in Mr. Carter's business systems." The look of panic that crossed their faces was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this moment. "I'm sure there's been some mistake," Diego stammered. "Oh, there's definitely been a mistake," Rosa agreed. "The question is who made it." As Rosa escorted them back into the hotel for questioning, I noticed the small crowd that had gathered. Diego's business partners, Alice's society friends, and several local tech reporters who'd been covering the event. Word traveled fast in Miami's business community, and by the time they reached the ballroom, everyone was staring. I took the stage as planned, but instead of unveiling my new platform, I delivered a different kind of presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent room. "Tonight was supposed to be about innovation, about moving forward together. Instead, it's become about something much more fundamental: trust." I clicked a button on my remote, and the screens around the room lit up with carefully selected screenshots of Alice and Diego's communications, with the explicit content tastefully redacted, but the business sabotage plans clearly visible. It seems some people in our industry believe that the best way to succeed is to tear others down, that the best way to win clients is to steal them through deception and betrayal. The murmur that rippled through the crowd was like thunder before a storm. "But here's the thing about trust," I continued, making eye contact with Diego's pale face in the crowd. "Once you break it, you can never really put it back together. And once people know who you really are, they tend to remember." I clicked off the presentation and set down the microphone. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. And remember, in business, as in life, your reputation is everything." As I walked off the stage, I could hear the conversation starting, the whispers spreading like wildfire. By morning, everyone in Miami's tech scene would know exactly what kind of people Alice and Diego really were. But I wasn't done, not even close. The marina at midnight was quieter than a library during finals week, with only the gentle lapping of waves against hulls and the distant hum of Miami's nightlife. I was aboard Serotonin, ostensibly checking some equipment, when Lucia, Diego's assistant, called with a warning. "Mr. Carter," she whispered into the phone, "Diego is on his way to the marina. He's very angry, and he's not alone." "How not alone are we talking about?" I asked, though I was already texting Tyler and Frankie to join me. "Two guys, big guys, the kind who get paid to make problems disappear. Thanks, Lucia. I owe you one. You don't owe me anything, she replied. Diego's been treating everyone like garbage for years. It's time someone taught him a lesson. Frankie arrived first, his weathered face grim in the dock lights. At 45, my old friend had the kind of practical wisdom that came from 30 years of fixing boats and dealing with rich people's problems. You sure about this, Jimmy? He asked, checking the yacht's systems. Diego's not the type to come alone for a friendly chat. I'm counting on it, I replied, activating the boat's security cameras and PA system. The more witnesses, the better. Tyler showed up looking like he'd raided a spy movie's prop department, carrying a tablet loaded with enough surveillance equipment to make the NSA jealous. I've got the marina's security feeds patched in, he reported, plus live streaming to social media just in case things get interesting. Oh, they're going to get interesting, I promised. Diego's arrival was announced by the aggressive rumble of his Mustang, followed by the slam of car doors and the sound of expensive shoes on wooden planks. He approached with two men who looked like they'd been carved from concrete and bad decisions. Carter! Diego's voice carried across the water like a challenge. We need to talk. Then talk, I called back from the yacht's deck, making sure my voice carried to the other boats where curious owners were starting to peer out of their cabins. The whole marina's listening. Diego stepped onto the dock, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. You think you're clever? You think you've won something? I think I've exposed something, I replied calmly. The question is what you plan to do about it. I plan to make you pay for embarrassing me, Diego snarled, nodding to his companions. That's when I activated the yacht's floodlights, turning the dock into a stage brighter than a Broadway theater. The sudden illumination caught Diego and his goons in a spotlight that made them look like the villains they were. Gentlemen, I announced over the PA system, my voice now booming across the entire marina, you're now live on social media. Say hello to your audience. The effect was immediate and beautiful. Phones started appearing on other boats as people began recording. The two hired muscle looked around nervously, clearly not having signed up for a public performance. Frankie and Tyler flanked me as I walked down to the dock, evening the odds considerably. You want to do this here? I asked Diego, gesturing to the growing crowd of spectators. In front of everyone? Because I'm happy to discuss how you and my wife tried to destroy my business. I'm sure your investors would love to hear about your business practices. Diego's face cycled through several shades of red. You stole my woman? Your woman? I laughed, the sound carrying clearly over the PA. Diego, she was never your woman. She was my wife who decided to trade up and ended up trading down. There's a difference. One of the goons stepped forward, but Frankie moved to intercept him. Easy there, big guy. Lot of cameras around, lot of witnesses. You sure you want to be the star of tonight's viral video? The crowd was growing, drawn by the lights and the drama. I could see phones recording from every angle, social media notifications pinging like a digital rainstorm. Here's what's going to happen, Diego, I said, stepping closer. You're going to get back in your compensation mobile and drive away. You're going to leave my wife alone, though honestly, you can keep her if you want. And you're going to try to rebuild whatever's left of your reputation after tonight. And if I don't? I smiled, pulling out my phone and showing him the screen. Then I released the rest of the evidence. The financial records Tyler found. The client lists you've been stealing. The tax irregularities Detective Alvarez discovered. Your choice. Diego's face went pale in the floodlights. He looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at the goons who were already backing away from the situation. This isn't over, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. Yes, it is, I replied. Then, in a moment of pure theatrical inspiration, I stepped forward and slapped him. Not hard enough to cause real damage, but hard enough to be heard clearly over the PA system and recorded by dozens of phones. The crowd gasped, then burst into applause. Diego stumbled backward, his hand to his cheek, his eyes wide with shock and humiliation. "Next time you want to steal something," I announced to the crowd, "steal from someone who can't hack your life and broadcast your failures to the world." As Diego and his companions retreated to the parking lot, I heard someone in the crowd shout, "That's how you handle a cheater." The applause grew louder. But I still wasn't finished with him. 3 days after the marina incident, Diego's world began collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. The viral videos from that night had been viewed over 2 million times, spawning memes, reaction videos, and a hashtag, Marina Justice, that was trending across social media. But I wasn't content to let social media handle my revenge. I wanted something more personal, more permanent. That's why Tyler and I found ourselves crouched behind a hedge outside Diego's Coral Gables mansion at 2 a.m., armed with spray paint, a drone camera, and a plan that would have made Sun Tzu proud. "Remind me why we're not just letting his business failure be enough?" Tyler whispered as he piloted the drone over Diego's property. "Because," I replied, shaking a can of fluorescent pink spray paint, "sometimes you need to make a statement that can be seen from space." Diego's precious Mustang sat in the circular driveway like a monument to overcompensation. Using Tyler's remote hacking skills, we triggered every security light on the property, then set off the car alarms of every vehicle in a 3-block radius. The cacophony was beautiful. While the neighborhood erupted in confusion, I went to work on the Mustang. In large, perfectly legible letters, I spray-painted thief across the hood, cheater along the driver's side, and loser on the rear window. Tyler's drone captured every moment in high-definition glory. For the finishing touch, I left a note under the windshield wiper. "Next time you steal from someone who can't hack your life. JC." The video went live on social media before we were even back to my car. By morning, Diego's humiliation was complete. His business partners had pulled out, his investors were fleeing, and his reputation was in tatters. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. Alice, meanwhile, was discovering that betrayal was a two-way street with no U-turns allowed. The confrontation at her mother's house was a thing of beauty, orchestrated entirely by Alice's own poor choices and her family's sense of betrayal. Mia, Alice's former best friend, had turned into her worst enemy with the enthusiasm of a convert, leaking every dirty detail of Alice's affair to anyone who would listen. "You destroyed everything," Alice's mother screamed in the perfectly manicured front yard of her Coconut Grove estate. "Our family name, our reputation, our standing in the community. And for what? For that ridiculous man with his ridiculous car?" Alice tried to defend herself, but the damage was too extensive. Her mother disowned her publicly, Mia posted the entire argument on Instagram Live, and Alice's society friends scattered like roaches when the lights come on. I watched it all unfold from my office, feeling a satisfaction that was probably unhealthy, but undeniably sweet. Detective Rosa stopped by that afternoon with an update on the legal proceedings. "Diego's looking at serious charges," she reported, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Business espionage, conspiracy, theft of intellectual property. Alice, too, though her lawyer's trying to work out a plea deal." "What kind of plea deal?" "Full cooperation, complete disclosure of everything she knows about Diego's business practices, and forfeiture of any claims to your assets in the divorce." I leaned back in my chair, considering. "And if she doesn't take the deal?" "Then she's looking at potential jail time, complete financial ruin, and a criminal record that'll follow her forever." "Tough choice," I said, though we both knew it really wasn't. That evening, Alice showed up at my office, looking like she'd aged 10 years in the past week. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the defeat in her shoulders or the desperation in her eyes. "James," she began, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Let me save you some time," I said. "You're here to beg. You want me to drop the charges, forgive the betrayal, maybe even take you back. You're going to tell me you made a mistake, that Diego manipulated you, that you never meant for things to go this far." She nodded, tears starting to form. Here's the thing, Alice, I continued, my voice steady and cold. You didn't just cheat on me. You didn't just have an affair. You tried to help Diego burn my house down, destroy everything I'd built, ruin my reputation and my livelihood. So I decided to burn down your world instead. Please, she whispered. I'll do anything. You already did, I replied. You chose Diego over me, chose betrayal over loyalty, chose destruction over love. Now you get to live with those choices. Alice left my office broken and defeated, but I felt no sympathy. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. But there was still one final act to this drama, and it was going to be spectacular. The charity yacht party was supposed to be a celebration of Miami's tech community coming together for a good cause. Instead, it became the stage for the final act of my revenge drama, complete with a thunderstorm rolling in from the Atlantic, like nature's own special effects. I should have known Alice and Diego would try one last desperate gambit. Desperation makes people stupid, and stupid people make predictable choices. They arrived separately, trying to blend in with the crowd of donors and tech executives aboard Serotonin. Alice wore a black dress that screamed funeral chic, while Diego had apparently decided that a baseball cap and sunglasses would make him invisible. It was like watching a master class in how not to go incognito. I'd been expecting them, of course. Tyler had been monitoring their communications. Detective Rosa had plainclothes officers scattered throughout the crowd, and I'd prepared a final surprise that would end this whole mess with the kind of flourish that Hollywood directors dream about. The storm was building on the horizon as Alice made her move, slipping away from the main party and heading toward the yacht's lower deck where she thought she could corner me privately. Diego followed 5 minutes later, right on schedule. What they didn't know was that I'd activated the yacht's security lockdown system, sealing the main lounge with them inside while keeping the upper decks accessible to the party guests. They were trapped in a glass box, visible to everyone, but unable to escape. James! Alice pounded on the reinforced glass as I appeared on the upper deck, looking down at them like they were exhibits in a zoo. Let us out! We need to talk! Oh, we're going to talk, I replied, my voice carrying clearly through the intercom system. We're going to talk in front of everyone. The party guests had noticed the commotion and were gathering around the glass-walled lounge, phones out and recording. The live stream Tyler had set up was already showing over 50,000 viewers and climbing. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, my voice carrying over the yacht's PA system and out across Miami Bay. Welcome to the final chapter of a very sordid story. Here we have Alice Carter, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and Diego Salazar, the man who thought he could steal my business, my wife, and my life. Thunder rumbled overhead, as if the universe was providing a soundtrack. Alice tried to look dignified, despite being trapped like a rat in a cage. James, you're being ridiculous. Let us out and we can discuss this like adults. Adults? I laughed, the sound echoing across the water. Alice, adults don't conspire to destroy their spouse's livelihood. Adults don't betray 20 years of friendship for a midlife crisis with wheels. Diego stepped forward, his face red with rage and humiliation. You think you've won something? You think this makes you better than me? I think this makes me smarter than you, I replied. You see, Diego, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed I was weak, that I'd just roll over and let you take everything I'd worked for. You forgot that I built this business from nothing, that I survived in Miami's tech scene for 15 years by being tougher and smarter than people like you. The storm broke overhead, rain lashing the yacht's windows and turning the evening into a dramatic spectacle. Lightning illuminated the bay as I delivered my final verdict. Alice, you said I'd lose everything. You were wrong. I lost a cheating wife and some fake friends, but I kept my business, my reputation, and my self-respect. You, on the other hand, lost your family, your social standing, your financial security, and your future. Alice pressed her hands against the glass, tears streaming down her face. "Please, James. I'm sorry. I made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected, "and choices have consequences." I turned to Diego, who was frantically trying to find another way out of the lounge. "As for you, Diego, you wanted to play in the big leagues. Congratulations. You just learned what happens when you challenge someone who's actually good at the game." The crowd of party guests was mesmerized, watching the drama unfold like a live-action thriller. The social media comments were pouring in, the hashtags were trending, and my revenge was being broadcast to the world in real time. "Security will escort you both off my yacht now," I announced. "Detective Alvarez will be happy to discuss your legal situations with you on the dock." As the lockdown released and security officers moved in, Alice made one last, desperate attempt to reach me, lunging forward and trying to climb the stairs to the upper deck, but desperation had made her clumsy, and she slipped on the rain-slicked steps, tumbling backward into the yacht's heated pool with a splash that could be heard over the thunder. Diego tried to help her, but his expensive shoes had no traction on the wet deck, and he went down hard, sliding across the floor like he was auditioning for a slapstick comedy. The crowd gasped, then burst into laughter and applause as Alice and Diego were pulled from the pool, soaked, humiliated, and utterly defeated. As they were escorted off the yacht by security, booed by the crowd and pelted by rain, I stood on the upper deck feeling a satisfaction so complete it was almost spiritual. The storm raged around us, lightning splitting the sky and thunder shaking the yacht, but I felt perfectly calm. My world was restored, my enemies were vanquished, and justice had been served with a side of public humiliation that would be remembered for years. "Next time," I called out as Alice and Diego disappeared into the night, "leave the yacht to the professionals, and leave other people's lives alone." The crowd cheered, the rain poured, and my revenge was complete.